Welcome to episode 6 of Mark on Comms. This is week 3 of the Euroleague Women regular season, and I'm going to give you my takeaways from the week. So we're going to have a look back through all of the results from the 8 games. I'm going to give you what my predictions were, how they stacked up this week. We'll also look at my takeaways, what the big things are that I'm leaving week 3 with, and we'll jump forward and have a look at the slate of games for next week as well. So let's start things off by going through all 8 results from week 3. First up, Olympiacos going down to Mersin on their home floor. Olympiacos fall to 0-3, Mersin moved to 3-0. This one was pretty much written in the stars before it took place, but Mersin made relatively light work of that one. Next up, super interesting one in Poland. Polkowice pushing Fenerbahce all the way. Eventually, the Turkish team, the reigning Euroleague Women's champions, coming away with a 2-point win against Polkowice. A wonderful result, certainly a super interesting game. Going to get into that a little bit later in this episode. Skio against Lond, an interesting one. Skio coming away with a 4-point win on their home floor. Certainly a lot of confidence for Lond to take from that result. That will buoy them going into the latter stages, the second half of the first round. I'm sure they would have wanted the win, but only losing by 4 on the road against a very strong team isn't a bad result for them. Next up, Villeneuve d'Ascq going down by 16 against Zaragoza. A better performance from the French team, but Zaragoza just a little bit too strong for them on the night. Final game of Wednesday was Valencia picking up a relatively straightforward win against Győr, 15-point win on their home floor in Spain. Győr again put in a battle, struggled to get points on the board. Talked about in the build-up to that one, the fact that I wasn't sure whether Győr have enough firepower to get them into games and get them the wins in the big games this season. On Thursday, we had a 3-game slate, and this is where it got super interesting. 3 super hot games that I picked as my ones to watch in episode 5. DVTK going up against Avenida. I was on the commentary for this one. Super interesting game. DVTK on their home floor, a rabid home court fan base, bringing the noise for the full 40 minutes, but Avenida's depth and quality shone through in the end, and they managed to hold on and come away with a 4-point win, and that is a big win on the road for Avenida, moving them to a 2-1 record. DVTK slipping back to a 1-2 record. The next one, Umana Reja against Praha. This one, didn't expect it to be this bigger gap between these two teams. We'll talk about my predictions shortly, but the home team, Umana Reja, not able to come away with the win on that one. Praha picking up a 20-point road win and really starting to gain some momentum. Bourges against Brno wrapped up our games for the week. The home team maximising their home court advantage, pouring in the points against Brno. So Bourges win that one 91-70. Okay, let's jump in and have a look at how my predictions stacked up this week. I'm not going to lie, I was feeling pretty good about myself after Wednesday. 5 from 5, some of them pretty easy to call, certainly went the way of the form book. Little bit squeaky bum for the Fenerbahce against Polkowice game, but Fenerbahce coming away with that 2-point win in the end. Again, I didn't see the Skio-Lond game being as close as it was. I thought Skio would come away with a double-digit win in that one, but Lond, again, pushing hard and pulling at my heartstrings, but not quite having enough, so Skio came away with the win there. And then the Valencia and Zaragoza games, relatively easy to pick off the form book. Thursday was the tougher day for the predictions. I thought the depth of Avenida was going to be too much for DVTK. That proved to be the case. However, that home court advantage certainly helps DVTK in their games and really pushed them on to make that a super close game. But got that one right. Avenida coming away with the win. The next game is where it all fell apart from me. The romance in me, the basketball romantic in me, kind of got carried away, I think, looking at that youth coming through for Umana Reja. But they just didn't turn up necessarily in the big game. Praha, the return of Jones, which we're going to talk about later in the episode, was a big part of that as well. But Praha's depth, experience and stability paid out on the road in Venice for that game. For Umana Reja, the likes of Bacani, Smalls and Villa just struggle to get their offense firing. Not high efficiency offensively from them under the pressure from Praha, the defensive pressure. And ultimately that's where my fall down came. I picked up the last game of the week, Bourges taking the win over Brno, but it all came apart in that penultimate game. Again, Do comment on my predictions in our preview episodes. I always love getting those posts on social media and speaking to you guys about how you see those ones boiling out. So yeah, I got 7 out of 8, not too bad. Slightly annoyed I couldn't pick the full 8 this week. Okay, so the first of my takeaways from week 3 of the first round of Euroleague Women's this season is, does Jones push Praha into a real title contender position? First game that she's played this season, she arrived early, literally jumped on the plane as soon as WNBA season finished, but has only really got up to speed this week. So she was on court this week, ended with a double-double, 19 points, 11 rebounds, absolutely a big part of why Praha were able to come away with that road win against Raya. Obviously, quite a familiar face for Praha fans, quite familiar for us to see her in that jersey. Missed last season, but prior to that, she was with Praha for 4 seasons in Euroleague Women's. Obviously, alongside usually Alyssa Thomas. Alyssa Thomas not part of the action this season for Praha. But it looks like Jones picks up where she left off. The big thing that I take from the arrival of Jones now is it feels like Praha have a really legitimate offensive threat in the front court. Building up to today's game and the previous 2 games they've had, Ameze Hoff has done a phenomenal job. She really has. But I think she'd probably be straight up about the fact that she probably isn't that go-to offensive player. Defensively, she's very physical, very strong, does a phenomenal job, but she's probably not to the same offensive output as Jones will give Praha going forward. So I think now having that inside threat makes Praha far more difficult to deal with. Teams that go against them can't just chase shooters out and not worry about the interior so much. They're going to have to double down, double across onto Jones when the ball goes to her in the low post. So that makes them a far more difficult proposition. So that's my big takeaway from week 3 with regards to Praha, is the fact that I think the arrival of Jones and how she performed this week absolutely pushes them up the power rankings, pushes them into being a serious title contender this year. My second takeaway from week 3 is the fact that are Fenerbahce beatable? Polkowice gave them the scare of their life. The home team, the Polish team, up by 10 at the half. Fenerbahce had to dig deep. They had to go down into the well and draw up everything they've got to keep their unbeaten start to the season alive. They did. They moved to the 3-0 record. Polkowice dropping to a 1-2 record, but it took everything. And the one thing that I brought out of this game, and it just feels like Emma Messman knows how to turn up when her team need her. She doesn't go all in every game. She doesn't make every game about her. She doesn't need the ball in her hand. She doesn't need to be the focal point in every game. But when her team need her, she just has that ability to go through the gears, to absolutely step up both ends of the floor. She ended up with a 22.6 rebounds, 6 assist performance, her best performance of the year for me. And that's when her team needed her. And I believe that's the sign of a true champion. You don't win as many EuroLeague women's titles as Emma has. You don't get the MVP awards. And I think for me, that's kind of what answers this question. The Messerman factor is what makes Fenerbahce unbeatable. I think if you remove Emma from that team, then they become a little bit more beatable. But she's like their superpower. When they're struggling, when things aren't going their way, she's the one that takes the team on her back. She's the one that raises a game right now. Alongside that, don't get me wrong, big performances. The likes of Charles chipped in another big number. The vet really putting in some big performances. But I just think Emma Messman is that X factor that still currently makes Fenerbahce unbeatable as a team. My third takeaway of the week is looking at the other end of the tables. And the question is there a way back for Olympiacos, Villeneuve Dask and Győr? It's a big ask. They all sit on 0-3 at the halfway stage of the first round. Remember, it's the top 3 of each group that goes through. That 4th place team will drop down into the Eurocup Women Tournament. As I say, all 3 0-3. Looking at the points difference, how badly they've been beaten in this. Győr minus 17 per game, so they're losing on average each game by 17 points. Villeneuve Dask losing by 24. Olympiacos losing by 27. Now, again, zooming out, being a bit more subjective, maybe not so objective and looking at the data, just my gut feeling on this one is the one that I worry about most, the one that is on the cliff edge right now is Olympiacos. I just struggle to see how they fight their way back in. I want to be proved wrong. I love seeing teams have that resilience and that almost resurrection back into a competition. The next game is huge. They face Sabine Brno in their next home game. And for me, mark that one down now. That is a must win. There is no way, I can't see Olympiacos being able to make it through if they don't beat Brno in their next game. I just think that is the final nail in the coffin. Obviously, it would still be mathematically possible, but I just don't see how it works for them if they don't win that game. On a brighter note, I still feel that Villeneuve d'Ascq, Győr, especially Győr, have an opportunity. They have a chance of resurrecting themselves. It's tougher, I think, for Győr because their group is unbelievably competitive, is super difficult. 3 teams that could absolutely make it to the final 6. So that makes it tougher. I think out of those 3, Villeneuve d'Ascq are probably the ones with the greater chance of fighting their way back and giving themselves a hope of making it through to the second round. So yeah, difficult to see all 3 on the edge of the cliff. Maybe Olympiacos at the moment hanging on by their fingernails. But it'd be interesting to see. Next week is a do or die, I think, for all 3 of those teams. My final takeaway of week 3 of the Euroleague Women first round. We're heading back to Praha again, a double delight for Praha in my takeaways. And the question is, can Conde keep this up? That's what I'm asking you. She's averaging 18 points, 5 rebounds, 7.3 assists a game. This is a Maria Conde we haven't seen in a long, long while. She's 7th in the competition for scoring and she leads the competition in assists. Now, bear in mind, she is listed at the small forward position. She's not a guard. She's not a backcourt player. She's leading Euroleague Women's in assists from the front court. She's getting it all done at the moment for her team. To give you some comparison, last season she was averaging 10.5 rebounds and 3 assists. So she's averaging 8 points more a game and over 4 assists more a game this season. That's how much that level of performance has gone up from Conde. Breathtaking is the only way you can describe how she's delivered. And to be honest, one of the reasons why Praha have looked so good in the opening few weeks of this season, touted as an MVP candidate, I am 100% on board that train. I am on board the Conde MVP train for sure. She is the caliber type of player. The style of play, the psychology, the battler, the hustler, the warrior style that can win you that MVP award in what is going to be a different feel regular season this year. The only caveat I put to it, and weirdly it's a positive for Praha as a team but a negative for her fight for the MVP award, is does the arrival of Brionna Jones dilute her impact? Ultimately, there's one ball on the floor in the first 2 weeks of the season. Conde has had to do more. But that said, she had another big 20-point plus game in week 3 with Jones on the floor. So, is that worry about Jones diluting her impact misguided? Is Maria Conde stepping up and going, no, I'm going to be the focal point offensively for this team now. I'm going to go and get this job done for this team now. Certainly excited to see how she goes. And I'm not going to lie, I'd love to see her in the MVP conversation in a few months' time when we properly get down to the nitty-gritty of a full regular season and having a serious discussion about that. Conde deserves to be in that level of player. That accolade should absolutely at some point be on that CV for her. Okay, so that wraps up my takeaways from week 3 of the Euroleague Women first round. Before I head off and leave you to your days, we're just going to have a quick look at next week's roster of games. Again, 8 on the slate. This time we're evenly split, and this time we're going Tuesday, Wednesday, so you can have your Thursday back free to do what you want with. First up on the Tuesday, we have Mersin against Bourges. I'm on the commentary for this one. It's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Mersin will go in favourites on their home floor in Chukarova. Against Bourges up and coming, certainly finding their feet. Some surprises, the likes of Duché having a phenomenal season so far. Not one I was predicting to be such an offensive leader for the Bourges team, but she is. Going to be an interesting one. Next up, we have Fenerbahce against Villeneuve d'Ascq. I asked, are Villeneuve d'Ascq on the cliff edge? Doesn't really get any easier for them going up against the unbeaten reigning champions on the road. Fenerbahce clearly heavy favourites for that one, but could be interesting as Fenerbahce will want to make a statement after the nail-biter against Polkowice this week. Talking of Polkowice, they'll be back on their home floor taking on Zaragoza. They'll take confidence from this week's result against Fenerbahce, even though it was a loss. Going against, again, another team with some momentum and confidence in Zaragoza. Going to be a tough one. That could be super, super close. We also have Praha going up against Valencia. That's probably my pick of the day. Again, I'm on commentary for that one, so make sure you tune in to watch that game, available either on the official FIBA YouTube channel or through the DAZN app. Praha against Valencia. Pick your winner on this one. High-flying Praha. Tons of talent against high-flying Valencia. Tons of talent. That really is paper thin to pick your way between these ones. Again, maybe the home court will help Praha in that one. Flipping across to Wednesday's action and the 4 games. Olympiacos against Brno. Said it before earlier in this episode. Must-win game for Olympiacos. Probably must-win for Brno as well. Lose that one, and that certainly brings them down into that dogfight with Olympiacos. Second game of the night on Wednesday is DVTK against Lund. Against DVTK now 1-2, Lund 1-2. Those two are going to be battling it out to get into the top 3 within their group. This is a huge game. Obviously, it was a 1-point win in the reverse of this fixture back on game day 1. Lund just about scrabbling to the win. So the head-to-head could be a huge part of this. So DVTK will want to win by more than 1 point. But the win is everything in this game. Next up, Raya against Győr. Obviously, Győr, one of those teams sitting without a win at the moment in probably what is now the toughest group in the first round. On the road to Raya, that's not an easy ask. Raya on their home floor, it's tough to go there and come away with the win. Győr will know they need to. They didn't perform well in that opening game day game on their home floor against Raya. They now have to. It's do or die. They need to put in a big performance on Wednesday. And then wrapping up the week, my final commentary game of the week as well, as I'll be on the mic covering Avenida against Skio. An absolute classic. Again, this season keeps turning up huge games of very competitive teams. And this Avenida Skio game is going to be no different. 2 teams sitting on the same record with tons of talent. Avenida probably have the advantage in this one ever so slightly. Skio haven't looked as convincing since opening game day. Obviously losing game day 2, winning by 4 points this week against Lund. Avenida seem to have grown week on week. Tough game against DVTK, but they got the win this week. So that one is another close one to close out the week. So make sure you get your diary sorted for Tuesday and Wednesday next week, because big games to be watched for sure. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 6 of Mark on Comms. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you plan to tune in this week. I'm sure I'll see you all courtside soon.